Want to make a difference for the next generation? Working families are struggling with the cost of living, y'all. And in the past few years, the cost of buying a backpack and school supplies has risen by over 30%. Goodman Community Center's Backpack Drive helps make back-to-school time a little easier and more joyful for over 500 kids and their families. Right now, they're collecting backpacks and school supplies. Here's the call. Visit goodmancenter.org/backpackdrive to learn how you can buy supplies and drop them off, order online, or simply make a donation. Together, we can give kids a great start to their school year. This is CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Today, it's Thursday, so of course it's time to dish on Madison's food and bar scene. I want to pose the question, what is the state of Wisconsin's fish fry? Curious question, beloved as ever, of course. In a recent survey by Madison Magazine, almost half of respondents said they go to a fish fry at least once a month. It's sort of a tradition that feels like it hasn't changed for generations and won't ever change. But is that true? Maybe not. In the current issue of Madison Magazine, writer Jeff Aloisia takes a deep dive into the Wisconsin fish fry and its uncertain future in an era of climate change. Jeff, welcome to CityCast Madison.
Thanks so much, Bianca. I'm excited to be here.
I am thrilled to have you here because this is just such a good topic that's close to the soul. Like I'm smelling fish fry talking about it. Normally when I'm talking about fish fry on the pod, it's universally positive. Best thing ever. Love it. Can't get enough. And we're talking about like a serious part of the story. You write in your article that, quote, "This is a story about fish, but it's also about the uneasy realization that even our most familiar traditions depend on ecological conditions we can no longer assume will hold." Oh, let's get into it. What is the state of fish fry? What's going on, Jeff?
Well, the good news is that fish fry is not going away. It's not going anywhere, but it is changing. So I've always loved a fish fry, and I had started to notice that little things were changing. So a favorite fish was disappearing, sort of prices going up, imported fish, showing up on menus. But I didn't see that anybody was connecting the dots. So I wanted to understand whether these were isolated sort of anecdotes or part of a much bigger story. So I spent about a year working on this story, and it turned out that they were connected through ecology, economics, invasive species, warming lakes, changing fisheries. And I think once I saw those connections, I couldn't unsee them. So the sort of TLDR version is, as our lakes warm, a lot of what we think of as traditional fish fry fish like walleye and perch are cold water species. So as the lakes warm, the fish are going away in some cases, spawning patterns are changing. It's really disrupting survival rates and just like how many fish we're left with.
Yeah, I've heard like little pitterings about this and just like, oh, well, yeah, we're kind of changing up the fish. So here over at Hank's and, talking about the ecological factors, things are going on in the lakes. Like, yeah, well, the walleye are really struggling and hearing these little bits. And really, your piece, I have to say, it's so fantastic. Like, it's so well written and the images, everything, like, I can't recommend folks check it out any more than like, you're going to enjoy it, but it's fascinating and beautiful. And you start off talking about the sea lamprey, which I learned about going up to Bayfield. They've got, all of their educational spaces. And I'm like, these are creeps and they are invasive species, right? That's how you start off your story, with one that like launched onto a fish that you caught, a salmon. And like, apparently they're getting worse.
Yeah. So in that case, part of what triggered my interest in this was I was up in Door County with family. And I'm not a fisherman, so I'm not used to sort of seeing these things. My mom had arranged a fishing trip out on Lake Michigan. And at some point I reeled in like a big king salmon, which is not obviously a fish fry fish, but probably the biggest fish I'd ever caught. And attached to its side was this sea lamprey, which if you've never seen one, it's like, it looks almost sort of prehistoric. It looks like an eel, but yeah, like scarier.
Like a long leech with teeth. It's scary as heck.
Right. And so, as I was saying, I'm not a fisher person. I like had never seen one of these before. And so I asked our guide, what is that? And he sort of clued me in. And the more I dug into this, I realized that sea lampreys used to be a huge issue in Wisconsin. We were able to sort of get them under control using something called lampricide, which is just basically like poison created specifically for lampreys. But again, as the waters are warming, it's made lamprey more resistant to lampricide. It's also created ecological changes within things like zebra mussels and quagga mussels, which are also invasive species. So it's really, it's not, I think one thing I try to get across with the story, it's not just like one isolated impact here. It's a whole web of things, including invasive species that are really hurting some of our native fish counts.
I know that different fish, like the perch, the walleye, the bluegill, they're experiencing some of this differently. But can you talk about like how is the warming waters affecting those fish, like our classics?
Sure. Yeah. So it's really, you think about climate change, you think about warm water, you think about summer, it's really about the winter. So like something that's happening is ice is happening later in the season. And then
The thaw cycle.
what we call de-ice is coming, earlier in the new year. And so that's really screwing up spawning patterns and survival rates of fish like perch, which granted the Lake Michigan perch fishery has been in decline for decades now. It's really hurt perch, walleye. I think like the portion of Wisconsin lakes that are now able to foster walleye growth are rapidly diminishing. There's a stat in the story that I'll probably misquote now, but I think something like 6% of Wisconsin inland lakes are going to be able to support walleye populations within the next decade. So it's really like, it is something to be aware of. We still get walleye from Lake Superior and up in Canada, but like without any kind of intervention, there's a good chance that like these things are going to go away. And again, that doesn't mean that the fish fry is going to go away, but I think it is worth asking, like, what does that tradition look like going forward? And what does that mean about the tradition as a whole?
Yeah, and you had like a graphic in the story and you identified, okay, not going away, but shifting. Like, how does that look like on the plate? Like, which fish are being subbed in? And if you want to talk about how the secret's out that this has always been a global market.
Yeah, I think one surprise for me in reporting the story was realizing that so much of this change had already taken place. In reality, like what's coming on our plates at a fish fry has not been local for really some time. Occasionally you will find, whether it's smelt or perch or walleye, like in select places you can get something that is at least from Wisconsin or from the Midwest, but it really has changed. And part of that is this sort of quiet substitution that's happening. And sometimes restaurants are being candid about that. And other times either they don't know because whoever they're sourcing from has made the substitution themselves and not told them. Or so you get things like there's a European fish called zander that's often substituted for lake perch. It is a freshwater European fish, but really it looks nothing like a perch. They just happen to have a slightly similar taste profile. Also ocean perch, which really shares nothing in common with perch except for the name.
Oh,
so
gosh.
these things are happening. They're also seeing a lot more Pacific cod rather than Atlantic cod, which many people prefer the taste of Atlantic cod.
So there's a chance we're getting duped, or we're just duped because we're ignorant.
I don't want to put any restaurants on blast here, because I think they're really trying. And part of this reporting the story was trying to give chefs and restaurateurs a tool to sort of educate the dining public and say, look, you might notice that these things are changing. Maybe the prices have gone up. We're doing our best, and here's why those things are changing.
You spent a year on this story, and you can really tell that this is deeply researched, dream gig. But I saw you spent time in the kitchen at Dexter's Pub during their very popular Friday Fish Fry. You were out on the Fox River on a fishing boat. Like, how many fish fries did you attend, and the amount of folks you talked to while researching this story?
Yeah. So thanks for saying that. I did spend a year. I went out with the DNR during their annual spring walleye survey, which meant like pulling in these giant nets in which they were counting how many walleye were spawning during the spring. I talked to quite a few chefs in the area and around the state. I went up to Bayfield, Wisconsin, where UW Stevens Point has an aquaculture facility that's doing really like state-of-the-art walleye aquaculture. And then the other part of it was, eating a lot of fish fry. So I gave myself, knowing that I was reporting on climate, I gave myself the challenge of eating a fish fry every week for a year while I was doing this, which is like not something I would recommend unless you both love and hate yourself. But it really gave me a good sense of like the landscape across the state of our weekly fish fries.
That's awesome. I have to bring up that I've interviewed Mike Seidel. You maybe come across his stuff. He's got the social media account Madison Fish Fry, and know that for years he has not missed a fish fry. So he's been going every week, and if folks want to go back and listen to that, I really asked him, like, but what about your stomach? Like, how do you do it? And he's like, I'm doing okay.
Yeah. Mike and I had lunch while I was reporting the story, and he's been doing this for a long time. And I think he must be more genetically inclined than I am, because it impacted me in a way I think it hasn't impacted him.
Yeah, it seemed like, are you an outlier? You seem like you're doing well. And he's like, yeah, I'm headed to 2 tonight. Yeah, and it sounds like quite the adventure. Are there any other memorable experiences from the reporting on Wisconsin fish fry that's jumping out that you'd want to share?
I think the story isn't really about saving the fish fry. It's really about understanding what the fish fry can teach us about how Wisconsin is changing. And that's something I think that's not necessarily an individual memory, but it's something that I learned throughout the reporting of the story. This is one of the few traditions in Wisconsin that cuts across political, religion, class, geography. For a couple hours every Friday night, like everybody's doing the same thing. And so I think when something that deeply woven into everyday life is changing, it's good for us to ask why. And I think like doing that taught me a lot about Wisconsin. It taught me a lot about sort of the traditions I had grown up with and what they may look like going into the future.
Yeah, I really liked hearing about or reading about your personal connection to this. Like, this is a part of your own family tradition, and it seemed close to the heart. Like, is that part of what brought you to write this article?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I grew up going to all you can eat fish fry every Friday night with my grandparents and my aunts and uncles. And
all you can
and,
eat? I don't know if I've gone. Is that how common is that? Have I missed that?
Unfortunately, that is a tradition that is going largely away. I think there's a few places. I know the Duck Inn in Delavan still does an all-you-can-eat fish fry. But yeah, ours was like family style, all-you-can-eat lake perch, probably pretty cheap compared to what it is now. But, and so that was a big part of my upbringing. But it also, I now realize like the fond memories I have of that are not so much about the fish as they are the sort of ritual of it and going to the bar with my grandparents before, regardless of whether there was a table ready for us, we went to the bar so they could have their cocktails. And it was about sort of breaking bread with the whole family.
Well, I want to dig in a little bit more into the ecology here, because like you said, the point isn't save fish fry. Fish fry is going to be around. You show and give voice to the chefs that you talk to, folks that are talking about just the business side of this, that it's more expensive to buy fish in the global market and bring it and to offer fish fry. And that's part of the pricing there. But I'm a science gal. I won a high school state competition, science Olympiad in ecology. It's my favorite thing. And reading about the changes to our ecosystem, like I've done work reporting on changes to salmon in Alaska. And like, it truly is a picture that we need to understand how much we're all connected. Going through the fish fry is something that is close to many people's hearts, and weeks and plans, like just a part of their rituals, seems really smart. I don't know if anything's hitting you about the ecology of this.
For sure. I think like we call this story Consider the Fish Fry because it's a bit of an invitation to think about these things. And, we have thousands of inland lakes. We have a commercial fishing tradition. We have probably, I think, the strongest fish fry culture of anywhere in America. It looks different around the country, but, in terms of having this weekly thing that is such a part of people's lives. And I think that if climate and environmental change can reshape something this iconic, then it reminds us that these issues aren't abstract. And so I think in some ways it's the fish fry is a little bit of a Trojan horse just to get people to think about climate, which can feel really abstract. Something like, we see wildfires on the news or we think of hurricanes in other parts of the world, but it also shows up in something as simple as what's on our plate on a Friday night.
Can you share a little bit more about the economic impact of these shifts that you observed? And also, are other people even noticing? Like, you notice, like, is this something like, hey, fish fry is changing? Is this something other people are talking about? I know, like you said, this is an invitation, but will this impact fish fry? You're saying it won't go away, but yeah.
Yeah, I think actually this is one place where people are least likely to be surprised because they do see it firsthand. Like I mentioned, all you can eat fish fry going away, but also just the cost of a regular fish fry on a Friday night, I think has gone up quite a bit and it's outpacing inflation. So, what might have cost $10 15, 20 years ago is now like regularly over $20. And a lot of that is just coming from sourcing. There's also some, tariffs and things like that. This is one thing that I was thinking about early in the reporting of this is if this is let's say this is a tradition that a family in rural Wisconsin is doing every Friday night, they take their whole family to a fish fry. Like that is going to become much less sustainable if all of a sudden you're paying $25 a plate instead of 10, and maybe 25 is on the high end of things, but it really has become more expensive. I know from talking to the chefs, like they're very aware of this. They're having to think about it every day. They don't want to lose customers, but like the reality is, even with something like cod, when I talked to the chef at Dexter's Pub, like they were paying quite a bit more for Pacific cod than they were a year ago.
It's like $20 more a box, right?
Yeah. And they don't want to serve any less of it. They don't want to give you a smaller portion. So I think it's something to be aware of. Again, I think this is a tradition that means a lot to people. And you go to a place like Dexter's on a Friday night and like they're not struggling.
Right.
People are still coming out. But I think it's something to be aware of before it reaches a sort of tipping point. And thankfully, there are some ways to address it. But it's also going to mean maybe changing what appears on the plate.
Yeah, I do want to linger on the thought of how important it is for community to be able to come together and not have to pay $20. Like that is going to exclude some families, just point blank. And that's a tough one to hear. But you mentioned possible solutions here. Like what did you come to around that?
Yeah, well, I think the most exciting one is aquaculture. So, as I mentioned, UW-Stevens Point has this aquaculture facility up in Bayfield, Wisconsin, which is like this huge warehouse full of tanks, and they're doing all kinds of experiments on walleye.
Saying tanks, you're like big water tanks.
Yeah. And what they found is that, one of the challenges with aquaculture, we eat a lot of farmed salmon, but we don't eat a lot of farmed walleye because it's a little bit finickier. One of the challenges is that you don't want to bring all the fish to market size at once because then you won't have any fish left. They have found that if they can sort of tamper with the temperatures in these tanks, and walleye are still able to grow and to survive when their growth is slowed down. So they cool down the walleye to slow their growth. And so they're able to stagger which ones they're bringing to market size at a certain time. So I think there is a future in which walleye aquaculture could, if not replace naturally occurring walleye, certainly help fill in some of the gaps in supply chain. But also, maybe we eat a little bit less walleye and perch, and maybe we are looking at things like bluegill or bass, which are warmer water fish. That changes things a little bit, but if the tradition is still intact and it means that people can afford it, maybe that's the way we end up having to go.
Man, it's just hitting me. Is this the issue that can bring the two political spectrum, two sides of the political spectrum together? It's like we have to save our walleye for Friday night fish fry. We need to be able to recognize the impacts of climate change and approach this come together. I won't make us talk politics. I know.
It's okay.
Politics and religion on Friday night fish fry.
Bianca, it's a really tricky issue, because there's also concerns about our fishing culture, and you're trying to appease a lot of different people who have different interests. And I don't envy the people who are having to come up with solutions for this, but yeah, I think certainly there's a larger conversation there.
Yeah, I love hearing aquaculture. If there are folks, you're out there thinking, well, how can I get involved? I guess probably support that work, support science, aqua. Mm-hmm. I want to ask another fun question. It's all been a fun conversation, but on your journey, did you come to decide on a favorite fish fry in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch, but I don't feel bad saying this because this is a Madison podcast. I think my favorite is I live on the east side, sort of near Madison East High School. Villa Tap is sort of my local, and that is the one that has my heart. I think
Villa Tap!
They do an incredible job. They always have a variety of fish, and that's sort of my platonic ideal of a fish fry. I think is like, a bar that just happens to do really incredible food, and I think they take their fish fry very seriously.
Oh, I adore that. Well, before I let you go, Jeff, I hear that there's a dinner happening on September 18th inspired by your piece. Love to hear it. What can you tell us about that upcoming event?
Yeah, so we're hosting, Madison Magazine is partnering with Sustain Dane to host a fish fry dinner. It is on Friday, September 18th. It's going to be at Pasture and Plenty. And for $65, you get a whole fish fry dinner, a welcome cocktail, whether it's a regular old fashioned or an NA old fashioned. And we're going to have some speakers. One of the scientists from Wisconsin Sea Grant is going to be on hand to talk about some of these sourcing issues. I'll be speaking a little bit. I think our partners from Sustain Dane will be speaking. And it's really a chance to just like come together, eat some delicious food, and to share memories about fish fry and talk about what the future and present of this tradition looks like. So a little more than that $10, but I think it's going to be a special night and would love to see as many friendly faces there as possible.
That's very exciting. Thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing about this piece and all the research that you did. It's important to us. It's central to who we are, our fish fries.
Of course. Well, I love what you guys do here, and I appreciate your interest, Bianca.
That's Jeff Aloysia, author of the August cover story for Madison Magazine and host of the Writing Forward podcast. For all you writer folks out there, that is also something to check out if you haven't. That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm your host, Bianca Martin. Don't forget, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Madison neighbor at membership.citycast.fm/Madison. If you enjoyed today's show, how about sharing this episode with someone who appreciates a good fish fry and cares about fish? All right, y'all. Help spread the word about CityCast Madison. Share this episode out to your friends and family. We will be back Monday morning with more stories from around the city. But don't tune out. On Friday, a special episode of our national show, Your City Could Be Better, will be in your feeds. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. Take good care of each other and have a great weekend.